first few episodes, tried to do them completely unscripted, and it didn't work for me.
Well, it's hard, mate. Not everybody can do what I do. You know what I mean? It's a challenging gig. It's a tough gig.
Where's that button, please?
I can't drop one on myself. No, you know what I do?
I
do
command
have one,
you.
I do have one of these.
Embarrassing.
There you go, that one. Music like this, man, is just like the frequency that we need to put us back together. And since I've discovered your music, you've certainly been there for me as a listener and as a fan.
Thank you.
Stephan, so thank you for that.
That means the world from you. Thank you.
Oh, man, you know, listen, as fans of music, we search for people who speak the language that we need it when we need it. And you just have this ability to be able to speak through your instrument. And it's great to be able to talk to you in more depth about your music, and where we meet in common ground here at Apple too. There's lots of stuff to get into. How are you today, man? What's going on?
I'm very well. I'm calm, if you will.
That's nice.
Today, which is good.
Have you had to work hard to get to that place?
Brutally hard. Are you kidding me? I'm like, it's a struggle every day to just remain calm. Today I got up. I said I'm going to run a lot because it always puts me in a better place, and just not try to be anything else other than just be in the moment. Now that's my biggest thing in life now.
Where do you think you're most present in life?
When do I think I'm most present, or where?
Good question. Good question on a question. Bit of both.
I'm struggling right now, like this month in particular, just with location as well. You know, whether I want to remain living in California. It's a big one for me. I have a lot of reason and a lot of pulling me towards the east side again, and Europe as well, just because of this music. It's just so European based, if you will.
Provence really changed you, huh?
Oh, it did.
It'll do that.
All too natural.
Yeah.
That feeling over there. So listen, I mean, that's that's the unsettledness. But I mean, again, they're first world problems for me. I have the option to choose where I want to live, but it's still something that's sort of like I'm trying to figure out right now.
You work hard for that option. That's a byproduct of backing yourself at a very early stage in your life and deciding that the safety and security that comes from taking an opportunity, but also prevents you from potentially following the adventure. You choose.
Well said.
You choose the adventure, and a lot of people, when you get to that place where the adventure is before you go, well, aren't you lucky? But they don't often acknowledge the risk and the courage it takes to actually not take the security and the safety and the direction.
It doesn't get any easier actually as you get older, and the more risk you take, that sometimes we'll say they say the easier it gets, but it's not really. The complacency aspect of things, even in my music, for example, choosing to go where I went with solo piano music over the last 5 years or so, was just because I was just kind of hitting my head against the wall on the other side of music. And I just the output wasn't matching the effort that I was putting out. So for example, if I thought I was putting out creating some of my best work in the pop, but it wasn't getting out to the world.
Yeah, so it's so tough, isn't it?
So I mean, there's a plethora of reasons that we're going against that. It could be politics. It could be just many things. But
sometimes people just like to have their ideas heard. And honestly, it's as simple as that. It's like, hey, it's a great song, but I have a job, and to keep my job, I kind of need to have an opinion. And my opinion could actually alter the entire trajectory of the song just because I don't know what it's like to serve at the altar of the music. I only know what it's like to have my opinion heard. Sorry, I've experienced it.
You know it.
Yeah. I've had my name taken off things, bro.
But
so far away from what
your choice?
Yeah, because there was nothing of me left. It wasn't a protest.
Right.
It wasn't I don't like it. It was like, no, it's great. It's just what I worked on is gone. So I don't need my time credited. I would love my work credited. My time is mine. I could choose to work on a song and end up not on it at all. I still don't expect credit for it.
I mean, that element of the LA speed dating process, as we call it here.
Speed dating, I call it that too. It's exactly what it is.
You get into a room, and especially when you have it when you're hot for a minute. Right?
Should we describe what this is like? This is a really interesting thing. So Stephan, as a songwriter, very successful songwriter and collaborator, but before the Stephan that we know now, who's now creating solace, balance, and calm for all of us, even if he's struggling to find it himself. Would go into a room and go like this, and an artist walks in, and an artist goes like, "Oh my God, you're my fourth session of the week," and then they go, "Hey, great to meet you. What are you feeling?" And you're like, "I've just met you. I have no idea."
That's not the point of music, right?
No.
Or art. I mean, if you look at it as a group therapy type of idea when you walk into a room, but like I said, when you have that hit song, everybody wants to be a part of your vortex for that minute in the world, and all of a sudden you're thrusted into every big room and with every big artist. But that's not what got you there. What got you there was the struggle, the real hard days, the long days, the losing your money, not knowing where you're going to get, your next meal is going to come from. And I've been there.
The backing yourself.
Of course.
That's it. I mean, it's a shit day. So what am I gonna turn tail and run, or am I gonna keep moving forward?
So that kind of wore me down. And, I did it. Even when you're successful, the constant kind of keeping up with the Joneses, if you will, in music, and trying to create another hit song. And I've been part of many, and
some really big ones.
It's been a thrill,
yeah,
and an absolute honor. But if I go back to everyone and I sort of dissect them in hindsight, I realized that everyone was done from a place of innocence and trueness, if you will, if that's such a word. But we weren't trying to create anything other than just a great piece of song, music.
And then you do. And then we templatize it and it becomes a thing. And everyone's like, do that thing. And it's like, but that thing is magic. I don't know where that thing exists. And some people are incredible. They're conjurers. They're magicians. They're able to conjure the magic, right? They're spellbinding.
Right.
Justin Trenta, spellbinding.
I love Justin.
Justin can walk in a room still to this day and be like, good luck, babe. And it's like, wow, one of the greatest pop songs of the last 10 years, no question about it. I know he didn't write it just himself, and Chappell was in the room, and Daniel was in the room, but wow, what a moment, right?
What a moment.
That's spellbinding. They're able to conjure the magic. And yet, to your point, bringing it back to your story, if it's starting to, from what you're describing it, if it's starting to dispel the magic a little bit, you got to find where the magic is, right? You got to go where it's at its purest.
I always said I never came into music for anything other than just to move people. It was a crutch for me when I was going through, my hard times as a kid. My parents separated, divorce, and all that kind of stuff. But, music was always there. I come from a musical family. But doing music to hit number one, I got to be careful how I say this, but we're also in, Grammy times, and everyone's just concerned about the prize, right? And the trophy. And, I've been there, got that, been nominated as well. And I'm saying, it's an honor. It's not what I'm saying, but that's not the point of what we do. At least the good ones. My goal every day, especially with my piano music more than ever now, is to sort of get up and try to create something that's relevant, but before relevant, that's emotional and that's going to affect people and be a friend for somebody who needs this sound, these vibes that can maybe console them for 3 minutes and 30 seconds as they listen to that.
Do you know what a beautiful day sounds like to me is waking up and it's raining and there's an instrument in front of you and it's perfectly mic'd and you're feeling something really deep and you're not quite sure where it is, and you sit behind your piano with a cup of coffee and you go searching for it. It sounds like a great day.
It's a great day. I have a glass of water. I don't drink coffee, but I do. Everything else, my piano's always prepped.
You got to ruin it, man. I mean, I painted the picture. I mean, just like, I didn't.
No. You know it. You're an artist. That's why you're really good at what you do.
Thanks,
you understand the psyche.
Just a great day. I mean, it's just, it's something that, like you say, you work towards that opportunity, and people may struggle to understand how that quantifies as a traditional day of work. But trust me, when you hear the music and you realize the places you've had to go to write the music and to get it out of you, I hear it. And that's what the authenticity is. The authenticity in your music is not just the notes and the playing and the arrangement and the tempo. It's the feeling you've created.
Thank you.
That is the whole thing.
That's what I strive for, those 14-hour days. When you listen to it surfacely, you kind of go, oh, it's piano music. It's kind of sounds simple and elegant and nice and pretty. But that space between this note and say that note is not as easy as one may think. And it sometimes takes literally courage when you're by yourself, especially when you're producing yourself, to listen back to yourself and saying, it's just, I didn't leave enough room. It's when you're talking to somebody or giving a speech, for example, and the pacing can affect the impact of your words. The same thing with music.
And what happens if you don't allow instinct to lead that process, despite the diligence you're applying to the overall, is it becomes this process of overthinking, and that's the worst thing that you can do.
Correct. I sometimes still do get caught in the trap of I'm trying to say so much or too much in this time, and you got to start removing things from the boat for it to start to sink, to float back up to the water before it starts to really sink. And you just have to know which elements to remove.
Yeah, well put. Well put.
So,
Beautiful. It's beautiful music. You made an observation before about like, the perception of piano, solo piano in particular, and instrumentalists. We grew up at a time when people who got behind instruments, it was very glossy. It was very shiny. They were selling a lot of records. There was candles on the,
right.
You know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
A legend in the game.
Yeah.
An icon, a goat. RC. You can't diss RC. He's the goat, man. He's the goat. But I mean, when I was growing up, RC was not necessarily, Richard Clayderman was not the guy that we were aspiring to be as kids, right? Beautiful player. But I'm saying it sort of set the sound of that music on a path that I think in a way, for me as a kid, I'm just talking about my experience, was disingenuine.
Well, I'm not afraid to say it.
Just for me.
And it impacted, and there's a bunch of those copycats around today. I always said my virtuosity, even though I can hit those arpeggios at the same speed as RC, and I'm not, it was just trying to smoke and mirrors in many ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
My virtuosity is the space and it's virtuosity of emotion. And that's what I really try to aim for.
It never feels like a performance with you. That's the thing I love. I never feel like you're like, check out his chops.
No, because I can do that if I want on Instagram and in between my sets on concert, and I can razzle dazzle if you want, but that's not the goal of my piano music, if you will. It all began for me probably 20-ish years ago when I would go to just dinner parties. And I would hear just bad music, in my opinion, being played. And those parties. And the frequencies were wrong. Whereas when you have what we call jazz or classical or music that breathes, it kind of creates a different ambience to the conversation that's being held in a group of 8 to 10 people at a very intimate dinner party. As opposed to, I mean, there's a place and time for a rave. There's a place and time for EDM. There's nothing like it. You know better than I do.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone kept on asking me, what's a good chill album to? Not new age with birds and waves.
It's too smug.
No, and not arpeggios. But something that is still it's classical, and is, in my opinion, composed.
It was a beautiful discovery for me in quarantine. Really, was the coming out of that space where I realized that I had boxed in this type of music into an environment that, as we've established, is more performative, beautiful. A lot of people love that. A lot of records sold. I mean, the 80s were very good for a certain type of musician making that kind of music. I mean,
of course.
Dude, they were the original Ed Sheeran model. Your man takes his little baby grand out on the road for like 300 shows a year and comes back. He's fucking got the bag, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
The whole crew of people getting off that jet with the bag. I'm telling you. Right? Very successful. No shade. Respect.
Oh, I was waiting for that.
I got to put one.
That's really cool to be in studio when that happens.
I got to put one on him. I got to put one on the generation before us. Many generations before us. But in quarantine, I went. I was just listening to everything.
Good.
I just listened to everything. I was like, well, let's just see what the streaming thing's really about. Because I'd been in the country about 4 or 5 years, built Apple Music, and was like, had been working within streaming, but hadn't really gone as deep as I could. I was like, shit, it's all there. Let's see what's in there that I don't know. And I stumbled across this type of music being played by you, by some of your contemporaries. I hope you consider your contemporaries like the Nils Frahms and
absolutely.
Oliver and people like that. I'm like, whoa, this is really moving me at a time when I need it. And that's what has unlocked this beautiful idea of what quote unquote chill is, which is not this smug, hey, I wish you could be here where I am. I've got it all figured out type shit. It's like, hang on, no, I haven't figured anything out. I'm searching. I'm a searcher. I'm wandering.
Well said. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say.
That's what it is, though, right? That's what it is.
I have a good story with that one, though. With my first album, I had been doing this 20 years prior in Canada, and it did really well. They were biggest, instrumental albums in the country, but just wasn't getting outside those corridors.
That's almost Richard Clayderman. Did you have the big hair? Were you doing the big performance stuff? With
Everybody wanted me to.
You had shoulder pads, didn't you?
They wanted me
shoulder pads in your suit.
But I lived through that era. I'm a child of the 80s. Well,
I feel like no one drank red wine for an entire decade. All anyone drank was Pinot Grigio.
Well said.
It's true though, right?
Yeah, cheap Pinot Grigio.
You never saw it. It's all about the profit scalability, mate. So no one's spending it on the booze.
But right before the pandemic is when I started to feeling I need to make a different turn here. And then just everything, the details of my first album that I re-put out with Decca, in 2020. We were kind of having to debate whether my face should be on the front cover or not. This is an interesting debate. And I'm like, no, it's the music. This music is about what I feel good art should be, is about the interpretation that Zane has, that Jane Doe has, that Bobby has. And let's remove my face from album covers. And we before the pandemic, we took a picture of an empty room and a piano. It looked like it was a quarantine room. So all of a sudden people thought it was the pandemic album, Tales of Solace, because it was released literally within 2 weeks of March when the world was shut down. But the music was that intimate. I had locked myself into my studio in LA for 3 to 4 weeks, and I just recorded, about 50 plus hours of music. Just record. And that's why for me there's a sincerity to the music, is I would just cut the sincere parts. That's how it works for me. That's my secret sauce.
So with the benefit of hindsight, listening back and understanding that it translates to you even after the fact. Because the moment probably tricks you sometimes.
Correct. So I'm just having conversations, improvisatory, if I can say that, is that's such a word, conversations with my piano for the most part. And I will, because I'm a producer, I had, privilege of kind of listening back as I was doing mundane things, going, oh, that moves me. Between 234 and say 560 or 559, I'm going to cut that part out. And then I would, of course, if it needed a clean in, a clean out, I would do those punch-ins. But the bulk of what you hear on my piano albums are these just sort of visceral improvisations.
So was that, to some degree, looking back on it with some hindsight, was that kind of a transitional process for you because it was such a different move for you,
Sure.
going back to this place which was not where you'd been in studios making hit records.
Correct.
You're like, I kind of need to produce myself to give myself the courage that I can do it in the moment.
Sadly, I'm a perfectionist, and I struggle against that.
Well said, by the way. It's a bummer.
Yeah, and I don't mean that in any sort of acclamatory or proud way. I think it's important to recognize when the struggle to have things perfect gets in your way. You need to
be a real problem.
You need to recognize that. And when I recognized that probably 10, 12 years ago in the studio, I would, with vocals, comping, takes, I would slaughter musicians when they come in and would play on my records, because I would just take more than I needed. And nothing wrong with that. I had the mind to kind of go through, even with Celine, for example. I mean, she's literally one of the greatest instruments in the world.
You put her through it?
Well, she wanted to on one song. On one song, I mean, Celine, you're done 2, 3, 4 takes max, and you've got everything. She could sing the phone book. But there was one track where there was a couple inflections in the vocal that she really felt she can do better and better. And she went like 82 takes later, which never happens with
amazing.
me.
I love that.
But I spent the 6 days going through all 82 or what have you. And but again, doing these albums has been therapy for me, and just a kind of an undoing of that, because I don't approach my piano music in the same way. That's not to say that there are a handful of songs in my piano albums. There's a couple, The Wanderer, where it is a little more scientific. I did cut many takes of The Wanderer because I was struggling with tempo. Because this stuff is not done to click, right?
No.
It's not like pop music when you decide, great pop ballads typically somewhere between 58 and 64 BPMs, right?
No, it's jazz in that regard.
And jazz is a bit different. I would say it depends if you're dealing with records like Kinda Blue by Miles Davis, but in the sort of 80 to 100 BPM.
You are not beholden to any particular tool in order to capture an experience.
Well said.
Only the moment that you're in, and then you have to basically decide whether that moment was authentic, for better, and most importantly, and for worse.
Absolutely.
Like, you gotta accept that if that's the take, the shit that's gonna bug you is just gonna bug you.
I always have keep it simple. And even say the last handful of hit records that I was involved with, my first big one, which was Celine, A New Day, a long time ago, that's when I was in my mid-20s, early to mid-20s, and I wrote all over my studio, I said, simple. Just the voicing simple, like keep it down to 3 or 4 chords.
I mean, how many Post-it notes did you put in your studio?
I have pictures, probably 12 to 14.
That's not too bad.
No, but I had a
like
little
a scene out of fucking Seven.
No.
You go in, this guy's got like 300 fucking pieces of A4 paper saying simple on it. I don't know, this guy's kind of psycho. Fucking crazy, man.
But keep it simple. My God. My new one though is Kill Your Darlings, right? So it means like you know when you're coming up with something, you're improvising, and you're like, it's all really cool, but you know it's not supporting the story and the purpose of that album.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You got to get rid, or at least pack it away for now. And because, a great producer is a reducer, as we know. And you have to literally reduce down to the essentials. And if you don't know how to do that, and you think every take is great, then you don't have a hit record. It won't communicate.
That discipline is incredibly.
Kill your darlings, meaning your wonderful little things. Either figure a system to keep them for some other project, but if they're not serving the goal of this one, my goal is to make you relaxed and make you just introspective. Typically on these albums. So if it's something that just really takes you away from that, or I'm trying to be fancy, I got to ask myself, what's it serving?
I go to your music for feeling.
Good.
That's it.
Good.
That's it. I go to you in a selection. I go to Wing Victory or the Sullen for a different feeling, but I go for feeling regardless. I go because I'm open and I'm willing, and even if I'm scared because there's a feeling I'm unsure I want to feel on that day, I kind of want to bury it with a drink or work or something else. Right. But I can't. I'm like, all right, well then I need a companion, and this music is the first thing I go for. Is music, because I've made a decision. I'm going to be unafraid of the feeling.
Oh, that's well said. No,
so it's like, well, then I need help.
Unafraid of the feeling. Yeah.
If you come up with a song called "Unafraid of the Feeling," I'm going to be so proud, and also I want points.
Unafraid of a feeling.
We're back. Yeah, you got one. Unafraid of the feeling. It was such a fucking strong 80s/early 90s banger.
Yeah, was that Boston? Yeah.
Well, that's more than
more
a feeling.
Than
we might get in trouble for that.
Yeah, no.
Or maybe we just don't do it in falsetto and sounding exactly like More Than a Feeling. We might get away with it. So you went to a beautiful place, a beautiful part of the world to record this music. It's the dream, right? I mean, I don't imagine it's a commercial recording studio anybody can just book. It feels to me like it's got strong invitational vibes to it. Because it's special, not just because of where it is and what it is, but also it's no mystery who's involved.
Right, of course.
And it also, where it sits right now in that story, which is not to be talked about. But it's obviously a beautiful property and worth fighting for. So let's talk a little bit about the experience of going to Provence and recording in this very historical studio too. I think most people know of it as a creative space and a winery only in the last 10 years for obvious reasons, but it's actually been that.
Jacques Lussier, who's passed on now 6 years ago, formerly owned the property.
Yeah.
And The Wall was recorded there by Pink Floyd.
There you go.
Big records from Wham and Sade.
Magical place.
Beyond. It's I say spiritual. I mean, you don't have to be religious or anything, but there's a spirit there. Mm. As you said, it's a lot older than we think. There's parts of the grounds that are 300-400 years old with just this kind of these old buildings there. And I just surrendered. I didn't go down there with anything composed for 28 days to 30 days. And I went there because I wanted to experience what we call, true monk mode was. Mm-hmm. To not have
TMM.
Yeah, that's what to get away from the influences of everybody for a minute. And also to be on the flip side of the time zone here in LA. So I just wasn't being bothered by anyone till 6, 7 p.m.
How long did you give yourself before you began playing the piano?
We were hitting the ground running by day 3. And by day 4.5, day 5, I felt completely in the middle of nowhere.
Immersed.
Yeah. And then this weird thing happens around halfway through by day 12, 14. You realize you're still barely halfway through. And you're excited, and yet you're afraid, and you feel alone, really alone, because you are alone at that point.
It's a skeleton crew though, right? It's an engineer, it's a tuner.
Correct. Correct. And I would see them maybe in the morning, but at night my days were long, and I was just able to just be unhinged and not be affected by anything else. And that's, I recorded a lot of music there.
I know the answer to this question, but it'll open the door to a little bit more of your life. What or who did you miss the most?
A family, but my son. Yeah. He's, back last year he was 12. And it just kind of this realization that my career choices sometimes, working with other artists, sometimes have taken me away from the kids.
It's the sacrifice.
Oh, it's real. And people say, well, you got nothing to complain about. You're making money and stuff like that. It's not that.
It's the sacrifice.
It's the sacrifice, because I can't get those years back.
Yeah, look, if anyone, and it's not just about the arts or musicians. That's an easy target because we love music, and then we also love to tell musicians that they should be lucky that they get to make music. It's just such a fucking weird thing to me. But anyway, whatever. It's not just about the arts, man. Anybody who commits them, you could decide you want to go and be a part of creating major advancements in technology that help save people's lives in modern medicine. You are going to remove yourself from relationships in order to focus on that goal.
Well, how do you feel? I mean, you're a father as well.
It's the sacrifice.
That's
a big part of, not to tell my story, it's a big part of why I'm here in LA at Apple, was that I was touring and DJing, and I realized that it was going to be one day I'd wake up and my kids we would love each other as much as we do, but I wouldn't know them as well as I want to. So I made that call. Yeah.
How old are they, you mind me asking?
One's 18 and one's 16, and my wife and I, we've been married 25 years this year. Like my family situation is something I'm exceptionally grateful for and proud of. But those decisions had to be made because I realized, thankfully, that I was making a sacrifice.
Of course.
For money and for shows and for adventures and things like that. But it comes at a cost, and the cost was the people I care about. I wasn't getting to build a balanced environment with them. So I totally relate to that feeling that you're having.
Thank you. And I mean, it drove a lot of the inspiration, for better and for worse. But as long as I was, I vlogged a lot while I was down there. I diarized a lot. I write a lot, and it is what it is. But you walk through that pain. You just need to I try not to avoid it.
Well, you get to.
Yeah.
Because it's called your craft. It's really
correct.
You need to.
Yeah. That's what I think the piano does for me. It's just, again, therapy.
So what was a good day? What was a good day lifestyle-wise down there? What are you eating? What are you drinking? Did you drink? Did you partake in the wine? Do you drink?
Do I drink? I only drink wine.
Oh, bummer. I'm in Provence. Well, that worked out badly.
And being French and Italian, I mean, it was like, you might as well say
like Southern States barrel-aged whiskey is all I drink. So I went to Provence to make a fucking album.
And my crew there, the entire team, Damien and everybody, they treated me well. And the dinners, I'd say farm to table.
Beautiful.
That's as well something that I realize how important food is. I know that, again, not everyone's able to do, but when you eat nutritionally well, and I did drink every night, even though I used to. Like I said, it's part of my heritage to have a glass or two of wine. Yeah. That's it. Just wine and water. That's all I drink. But there, of course, it was just there. It was just on tap. And, I would always have a glass or two by 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock. And I would let that after hours, because I had a strict regime when I was there, Zane. It's like, I would get up at 7 o'clock sharp. I'd be at the gym by 7:15. Mm-hmm. There's like the really cool raw gym there. Mm-hmm. I'd work out for an hour to an hour and a half. Then I'd have breakfast, and the breakfast was delicious, just like farm to table. And then I'd shower, and I would basically record from, say, 10 a.m. to 2:30, have a quick lunch, because I already had a big breakfast. But I remember this well. And I was back in the studio by 3:15, and I would record till about 6:30, 7 o'clock, and that was golden hour. And I would take a walk, just reflect.
Would you listen back to anything you'd recorded in that walk?
Sometimes. But when I was even listening, I would walk the room in the studio, and I always call it that's the best way to listen to music, is when you're not in it.
Yeah. Remove
you have to remove
100%.
I can't even be physically seated at the piano. I have to be walking and doing something else.
It's the sweetest spot, I think, when you've made something for a period of time and then you're just distant away from it, that when you press play on it for the first time, you don't recognize it.
Right.
That's when you're like, wait, oh, good, I've got fresh ears on this.
Of course. Fresh ears. Yeah. And then I'd have dinner. Dinner was exceptional. It was, some of the best soups. It's the strangest thing.
Soups are like Richard Clayderman. I mean, they get a bad rap, but soups can be delicious. I often, when someone would say, "What do you want for dinner?" Soup. I'm like, really? Is it Monday?
Oh, God,
why are we having soup?
Yes.
But a good soup, man.
Good soup. And then I
pop
would
a bottle and let's fucking go.
That's when the wine began, and I would see what surprises would come from, say, 9 to like 11:30 to midnight, and repeat.
It sounds like a beautiful life down there. It certainly is a prestigious environment to create music.
There's an admiration for art and a reverence for art and artists, just general there. And the vibe there is to sort of support that time, to give you that time, that sort of space to do something and not really say, make up excuses for your art. Like, I came back, and even though, in hindsight, I wouldn't make, how a director will say, I'd love to change that scene. I didn't have enough time to do it. I don't have that with that. It was like you said, it's a feeling, and I just let it be, and it was encapsulated in that moment.
There's a song on the album called "You Can't Run From Yourself," and it grabbed me very much. And there's a couple of ghost notes in there, little moments in there that you play that are beautifully. I don't know what there'll be a more technical term than I would have, but I refer to them as almost sort of discordant. But they provide such
Right. Thank
a beautiful twist in this otherwise really lovely arrangement. And it's clear that that's the wrestle that's going on. This idea of like, hang on. The uncomfortability is the point, I think.
That's good ear, though. I mean, that one is fully one take, and it wasn't composed. It was just an improvisation. Da 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 da.
So why did you call it "You Can't Run From Yourself"?
Because I think I was trying to do that for many years.
And I think that piece of music spoke to you on those terms.
I mean, I think that's why I am and was a workaholic, especially in the pop side of things. Just trying to just not deal with certain things in my heart, and it was easy to just stay an extra 5 hours every night in the studio and make that vocal that much better.
I call it self-destruction by distraction.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm aware of it now. I'm more or less over that, but I mean, I've struggled with that as well, and that song it seemed like a very apropos title.
Very interesting that you found a piece of music through improvisation that perhaps was a closing of some loop there.
Right.
If you name a piece of music that, then really it's an acknowledgement, and by acknowledgement, it's a sense of awareness of the issue.
Huh. I mean, it's sorry, like just back up there for a second. What you said.
You back up there. Sorry, sometimes people tell me what to do. I get really. It's a fight or flight, man. I can't help it. It's just like someone says, "Hey, can you? What do you think? What do you think?" Oh my bad. Sorry, it happened again. I can't believe it.
You're a gangster.
No more than you.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Probably no. You were saying that I found a piece of that kind of encapsulated a feeling through improvisation. I guess that's what it is. I think we subliminally, when we talk, when we are our loosest, if that's a word, like when we're just talking conversation, that's when the most honest things come out.
Facts.
And there's a piece called Sea Change on my first album of Tales of Solace. Sea Change is literally 2 minutes and 52 seconds long, 2:53, and it was an improvisation as well. I barely remember it, but when I was listening back to the hours and hours of those recordings, I stumbled upon this perfectly thing, and it became one of the singles, if you will. And it was, on top of a lot of the Big Chill playlists. And all of a sudden, 3-4 years ago, this song was streaming over 1 million a day. For piano music, that's a lot. Like when you have one piece of music that's streaming over 1 million times. We're not talking a pop song. We're talking just a piece of instrument. And then that song became so transcendent. That was during the Biden campaign, and Springsteen ends up using it for his campaign, speaks poetry over it. It's in all these ads and syncs. And had I not caught that sort of 2 minutes and 53 seconds, it wouldn't have literally put me in that place to be, leading is not the right word, but to be a leader in this genre. And that piece of music was really important. These little micro decisions that we sometimes we take for granted, we got to realize as producers, you have to pay attention, because sometimes it's those tiny details which are the most important ones that will, change the world.
That's the magic of it to me, is that it exists at all times. Look, it's frequency. We all know this. I'd like to think that as we struggle to relate to one another at a pretty intense level right now on a macro scale, that somewhere deep down we're kind of pulling away these kind of really tough layers, and we're realizing that actually the simple truths are already there. We're just burying them. The frequency is there, and we just have to tap in. And music to me has always been the great sort of North Star of that.
Of course.
Principle.
I mean, all of us who are in it because we love it is that's why we're into music. It's an emotional thing. Period.
One of the things I've learned to love more than ever is the fact that I know less about it the more I know it and listen to it.
Oh, that's well said. Yeah.
I know less and less. You would think after a life of dedication to music, I would listen to the way those chords are put together and feel like I just know it.
Right.
But I actually know it less in a strange way. And I think it's how we apply it to our life. It's how we choose to lean in or lean out.
Correct. There's a lot there.
It's a life in service, really, and being served by beautiful art. It's beautiful.
The music I do now, again, is perhaps a bit selfish. It's just there to serve and to help me through my own thing.
And it's working. Isn't that funny how that works?
Joni Mitchell said, if you can't move yourself, you can't move anybody else, right? Or you can't move the world. So it's like...
She also said, God is dead. Nietzsche. Nietzsche is dead. God.
Did she say that?
She was on stage at the Hollywood Bowl the other day.
Oh, she was.
She just leaned in and just went, God is dead. Nietzsche. And then she took his lip and she went, Nietzsche is dead. God.
How brilliant. I love her.
Fucking greatest, shortest joke I've heard in a very long time.
Oh, my God.
It's like who gets the last laugh?
Yeah, Joni.
Joni does, till God.
She's still part of everybody. She's affecting everybody now, which is wild.
What's your favorite Joni do you have a now favorite album or an era?
My favorite record or favorite song is Cactus Tree.
Wow.
Yeah.
Deep.
It's the tuning on the guitar. It's the lyric. Only recently, I'd say in the last few years, that I've actually paid attention to that lyric from a female perspective and what it means. And musically, it's stunning. Here's something people don't know is I've listened to so much Joni, and she wasn't educated in the guitar, right? So she came up with her own sense of tuning, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So by doing that, she developed her own diction at the guitar, and I'm trained, and yet at the same time, I've also tried to undo all the rules that I've learned in classical music, right? So by listening to Joni, I crunch chords in the same way that she would crunch and add just notes that you wouldn't think belonged to that chord. And I try to approach sometimes my solo piano music like a folk guitar player who has these interesting tunings. I mean, even like when I was at Miraval, or even when I'm trying to come up with different ideas, I've got to get out of my own head, right? Saying we all have, if I put my hands down, they'll fall into a typical place where Stephan Moccio's hands just fall down the piano. Mm-hmm. But if I'm saying, let's try to do something different, I will reverse my hands, for example. Yeah. And just do that, and just to sort of like from an ambidextrous perspective, and try to come up with different creative ways to force your brain to. And it's amazing because I am ambidextrous, not because I'm gifted, because I grew up in a Catholic upbringing, and I was told not to write with my left hand, so I had to develop that as a young child. But I have a strong left hand, and sometimes it gets in the way because I'll sometimes add 2, 3, 4 notes sometimes in my left hand. It's dense. And I'm trying to just keep things as essential as possible now. But anyhow, a lot, Joni, godmother, whatever you want to call her, she's infected all the great ones.
Yeah, I mean, just the sound on those records, going back and listening to them now, just hearing Jaco play and just hearing the way that everybody was just like serving one purpose, to bring those stories to life and to give them the most amount of connectivity, because they're not the most universal stories. Like Refuge of the Road, not everyone's going to be able to relate to that. They're very personal stories, and some of them very harrowing.
Of course.
And yet the musicality and the arrangement around them was so nurturing and loving that it's just, I just love it when musicians come together and serve one goal.
Yeah, which is to make you feel something.
Yeah, just to give the song life and let it go and improve life, because that's really what music is designed to do, is to make life better.
It is that simple.
It's really that simple.
Yeah.
Man, what a great conversation. I'm glad you get to have it with all of us on this Feel More Radio, man. This really cool idea, which has kind of come out of this really beautiful relationship we've developed here at Apple with you over the last few years. And the collaboration seemed very natural. And now we also get to put it into an environment, which I'm very passionate about, which is this new chill radio station. And I mean, it's anyone who's listening to this will understand that just through the nature of this conversation that both of us care about this environment, that we understand the pitfalls of it and how it's perceived,
right?
But also that we see the opportunities.
We see opportunities, yeah, absolutely.
To bring it to people through a modern lens and really inspire people through what is quote unquote considered chill in all forms.
I learned that through the process of recording Feel More Radio. You always start with an idea, and well said, to your point, it has become, firstly for me, a very enlightening experience. I've done so much research on the show. I've brought my skills as a musician, as somebody who's been devoted to music his entire life, and it's educational, if you will, and I think in a modern way for the most part.
It's a beautiful show. I mean, there's moments of real production in there that only you could really
Right.
think of. The moment when you talk about silence and then you let us sit in silence. And also and there's a lot of really beautiful reflection in there, but it feels like we're on the road. It feels like we're on a journey with you each time, which
Thank
I really
you.
love. It doesn't feel like you're reading off of a script in a studio somewhere. I feel like wherever you are is where you are, is where the picture's being painted.
Yeah, and I again tried really hard to do that, even though I the first few episodes tried to do them completely unscripted, and it didn't work for me.
Well, it's hard, mate. Not everybody can do what I do. You know what I mean? It's a challenging gig.
Where's that button, please?
I
Please.
can't drop one on myself. No, you know what I do?
I
do have one,
command you.
I do have one of these.
Embarrassing.
There you go, that one. Fellow Canadian Drake with that little drop there. Appreciate that.
Oh my God, that's so good.
Yeah, no, it's
So
true.
good.
It's hard, but what I like about it is that it's been lovingly prepared.
Oh, that's well said. That's what it is.
When
Thank
I
you.
listen to it, I feel like my time, the amount of time you put into creating something artistic through this radio experience, the least I can do is spend some of my time enjoying it.
It's so thoughtful a show, and I say that not to because I think each episode I spent.
Stephan just called
days
himself very, very thoughtful.
Embarrassing.
We're tied now.
Yeah.
1-1.
I will beat you at that.
Yeah,
I will be the most
I don't
embarrassing.
know.
Trust me. No, every
I
time.
don't know. I need that button over here now.
Every time.
But lovingly, yes, I tried. I tried to just give, like you said, if you're going to sit there with me for 58 minutes or an hour, I want every second to count. As a pop producer, that's what you do, right?
That's what you do, man. I mean,
Every second counts in 3 minutes and 10 seconds.
this radio
of a song.
experience must be a nightmare for the perfectionist in you, because you don't want to be improv with your radio show. I mean, it's like,
But what here's I've always said this in art, when people think, oh, I got to be free and there's no boundaries, but no, art freedom only comes with boundaries, right? Goalposts.
Elaborate on that.
There's no game. There's no football game without lines. There's no hockey game without boards. So the same thing in art. It's until you say, so for example, my piano albums, I go, I am not going to put another instrument on these albums.
That's a boundary.
That's a boundary. That's
Listen,
a
without
frame.
framework, you don't execute. You just keep creating.
Because otherwise you don't know the end, and then you make up excuses and it's never, ever done. And I'd like to think of myself as a completer. Somebody who completes the job in production, because there's people in art who just have a plethora of unfinished projects and projects, for example, say in their garage or in their studio, and it's not done. But there's a beauty in sort of saying, you know what, no more brushstrokes on it. That was that moment, that was that time, and that's what it represented. Moving on.
Well, a friend of mine said to another friend of mine, I love giving quotes that are first, second, and third person all at the same time. He said, the good news about finishing, I'll do it in a British accent because it's much better in his accent. He said, good news about finishing something is you get to start a new one.
You do.
And I think that gets lost on a lot of people when you get stuck in that sort of loop of like, it's not done, it's not done. It's like you're denying the opportunity to grow and learn something new.
Yeah, well said. I there's nothing else I can add to that. It's growth. Everything's about growth for me.
Look at the life you've built for yourself through fire and brimstone in some parts. I know you've been through challenges. First time we met each other, you were very, very transparent with me. I really appreciated that. You felt very comfortable, and you told me, you'd come through some personal changes in your life, and you were setting a new pathway for yourself. And so you've been through all that. Now you sit here, you take stock, and you get to put music out. You've backed yourself as an artist. You're backing yourself as a human. You're acknowledging these parts of your life and trying to move forward. What does growth look like for you now? What does the future feel like as someone at this point in your life?
Just touring. I'm really excited about bringing.
It's not the answer I was looking for.
Let's rewind again.
I was just like expecting you to just be like, it's a really good question. Okay, yeah, you win. That was fucking embarrassing.
Embarrassing.
I hit you with the deep one, and I'm like, so at this point in your life, having been through fire and brimstone, to come through the other side as a human being who takes a good long look at himself every morning and in the mirror and says, you know what, I'm growing, I am who I am. Where is growth to you? And you go, I'm going on the road, mate. Fucking sell some hard tickets. Get the fucking lights on. What do you expect? What kind of answer do you expect here?
Oh God. I don't know. Growth right now.
It's touring. Let's focus on touring. So you're going to go on the road.
I am. I'm going to go on the road in 2025. I'm kind of try to go all around the world.
Can you take your family with you? I mean, this is a kind of experience with your 12-year-old during certain breaks in schooling.
Yeah,
Come and
it,
do
it depends at the time of year. Absolutely. I've got a daughter now who's in. She's at a very, very exciting art school here in the country, and she's a photographer.
Amazing.
And she wants to just shoot me. She shoot everybody on from a photographic perspective, and she's uber talented. So yeah, that's definitely in the cards.
That's really fun. I mean, I think that's where the roads meet, and all the sacrifice and the hard work suddenly starts to come to fruition.
100%. Yeah, this is where a lot of the fun comes in as a parent, I think. And sometimes, there's a song on my album called 19 Years, and 19 years, Peter Adia, who's a podcaster doctor from Toronto, once said, "You are lucky, if you lived to have 19 years with your kids. The first 18 years is raising them in your house. The last year is an accumulation of them coming back to you from holidays." That's the average, if you live to be 72.5 years old or whatever you.
And this is the 19 years of the accumulation, or it's the extra year on top of the 18?
Extra year on top. So 19 years is what you have with your kids. And I don't think I've had 19 years.
Fucking ruin it.
No, it's going to ruin you. So the song is so personal. You'll see it's dry. It's in your face. It's like these singular notes. It's just me going, holy fuck. Yeah. Like, what have I done? Like, what have I, so with that awareness and kind of going, I've worked my ass off, but I'm no regret, but I have to really just do things differently.
Yeah. The way I look at it is like when the kids leave home, man, like, it's a real transition as that starts to happen. As parents, we're always going to have a job.
Yeah.
It's a job.
It's
a life.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
And it's the greatest job on earth. When they leave, you get promoted.
Right.
And you still miss some of the parts of the old job.
Well, that's great
where a lot of
analogy,
the
yes.
sadness is.
Yeah.
I missed some of that job. I liked some of that job. But if you look at it as a promotion, look at what I get. Look at the elements of the job I could never have had when I was the guiding principle of their life.
No, well, you know who can thank for that? Apple. This ridiculous thing for like on your phone when your memories come up from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
When you're like your 13-year-old's 1.
Crushes me, honestly. Every other day something will come up and I'm like,
19-year-old's
are you kidding me?
8.
Really? You're going to put that in front of me? Really?
I'm constantly taking screenshots, so it's back at the forefront of my camera roll as well.
Because I can't find it. I'm just like, I'll never find that again.
No.
It'll just be gone. I've got to screenshot that shit. Can you imagine if we were charging for screenshots? What a fucking business model that would be.
That would be a business.
We would be smashing that, wouldn't we? Put it in your photos, surface it by chance, then bury it in 25,000 photos. Well, you got to screenshot it. That'll be 10 cents per screenshot.
10 cents would be, we'd be billionaires, I think.
I've had fun, bro.
Thank you. Me too.
Let's do this again sometime. And man, the music you make is there's nothing more I can say, man. It's for those people searching for the feeling of things, and you really know how to conjure it, and whatever decision you made in your life to go forward and to focus on this, at least for now, was the right one from my perspective.
That means the world from you. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Good to see you.